What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to the channel.
Yo.
So, George Ferocious Kambosos, not a household name before last night, but an excellent performance, took all the belts off Teofimo Lopez. This was a very exciting fight, and I think it was kind of almost a tale of three parts, because you had Kambosos shocking the world in the first round, putting Teofimo down. Teofimo was coming at him extremely aggressively, I think quite uncalculated, to be honest, and he ended up sitting his butt on the canvas in the first round. And then you had sort of Teofimo come back later in the fight, and then Kambosos ended up on the ground, and then he came back in the final two rounds and picked those up and won those, ultimately cruising his way to a majority decision. 2 judges for Kambosos, 1 for Teofimo. What did you think about this great fight?
Crazy. It was, when you have a bunch of titles on the line, there's always hopes for a great fight and some sort of a back and forth, and we kind of got that. I saw it the way the 2 judges that scored it for Kambosos saw it. I thought that he won the fight. I thought that he did the right things. He did round after round what he needed to do. Teofimo's a stud. Make no mistake about it. He lost last night, but he's still a very high-level boxer and one of the best that we've got currently fighting. But I think he kind of showed his age a little bit, and I say that not as in old, as in a very young, still growing and developing fighter. I think that his post-fight stuff was a little bit immature, and then some of the things that he was doing as far as game plan and as far as just hunting for the knockout the entire time, that showed like a youthfulness, right? And sort of his game plan and structure of how he walked into this fight. Like they always say, if you go for a victory via KO, you're likely going to lose the decision, and that was very true last night.
Yeah, and he was going for the KO right from the start of the fight. I mean, the bell rang, and he couldn't run across the ring quickly enough, and he was swinging for the fences. I think his age definitely showed last night, and not in a good way, not as he's an experienced multi-organization champion, but as a young kid who let trash talk get the better of him, right? And his father was no better, because some of the advice his dad was giving him in the corner, I think, was horrible. He was shining him up, talking about how good he was, talking about, ooh, that was so sick how you did that. Come on, get this MFer out of there already. And then in the same sentence saying, calm down and take your time. Well, that's extremely conflicting advice. Right. Those are 2 completely opposite things and complete opposite game plans. There was a lot of anticipation, a lot of build-up to this fight. George Kambosos remained very confident the whole time. Usually when you have a mandatory challenger who's a 13-1 underdog, 9 times out of 10 in boxing, they say the right things. I'm going to come in, I'm going to give it my best, I'm the underdog, I'm going to try to shock the world. George Kambosos was not that way. He said, I'm going to take it to Teofimo, I'm going to put him on his butt, and I'm going to bully him and ragdoll him and show everybody why I'm better than him. And he was absolutely right. Yeah. It definitely got to Teofimo, which is why I think he was super reckless. He was swinging on shots that were completely off balancing him. Kambosos was reading him beautifully with a check hook, and that overhand, he was timing and landing that perfectly, and that's what put Teofimo down in the first round. Ultimately, we could talk a lot about the mistakes that Teofimo made and the problems that I had with his cornering last night. But the night belongs to George Kambosos. He did everything he had to do. Footwork was beautiful. Corner advice was sound. He stuck to the game plan. He stayed in Teofimo's face the whole time, and he capitalized on his mistakes.
Yeah, and he seized his moment just like Teofimo did a few months back whenever, he shocked the world and won a big fight and wound up becoming a household name and winning all these belts and stuff. So it was just time for the changing of the guard. It kind of seems like these belts are just going in a big collection from house to house. Yeah. And Kambosos is the one that holds them now. So, he's not unified. He doesn't have all of them. But, that's only a fight or 2 away if he's able to get his hand raised again. But, Teofimo, you're so right about when you talk about his dad just kind of giving nonsense for advice. And his dad has rubbed me the wrong way for a long time. Yeah. Ever since I found out who he was, and I saw him on like those Showtime all access type of shows. Yeah. And then like to see Teofimo like break down and be like, man, I wish I had like a relationship with my dad that isn't what it is, because we've kind of had to take boxing out of our father son,
different hats.
Exactly. And that kind of sucks because when you're a dad and you're a son and you start boxing as this united force, and then you have to break up and separate yourself, and we can still eat dinner together, but I can't have you talking about our boxing when we're at dinner with the family and stuff. It starts to get a little dicey.
Yeah.
And I think that his dad is just a big problem for him. He needs to distance himself as far as the boxing and the cornering goes. I don't know if it's a little too late for that to happen, but we've seen some really amazing father-son combinations in boxing.
Yeah,
and
the Furies.
We'll continue to see it for a long time. But I think he's just a little bit of a bad egg. I'm not the biggest fan of his. But yeah, Kambosos looked really good. I think confidence is something that's very important and essential to have when you're fighting, especially when you're fighting in title fights. But not giving respect to your opponent, which is kind of what Teofimo seemed like he was doing, is also very very dangerous. Even if you believe and you're confident that your skills are head and shoulders above somebody, this is a fight. Anything can happen. And when you just start kind of disrespect the person and you show them no credit for they're in the title fight, and even though boxing does a lot of lopsided matchups, they're there for a reason, and you can't just completely disregard them as an opponent. And when you do, stuff like this happens. I think Kambosos respected how good Teofimo was. He knows how good the kid is.
Yep.
But he also had confidence in his own skills. I think Teofimo didn't respect Kambosos and had was overly confident in his own skills.
I totally agree. I mean, there's a fine line and a balance between being confident and being overconfident, borderlining cocky. And I think that's where Teofimo was. And all week this week leading up to the fight, he kept saying, I'm going to knock him out in the first round. He's not getting out of the first round. And he was dead set on that.
Right.
And what ended up happening was he's sitting on his butt looking up at George Kambosos in the first round. And what you said about his dad is true. And it's funny because I'm a big fan of Teofimo. I think he's got such a bright future.
Yeah.
His skills are there. He's got great power. I do think his success is going to happen in the higher weight classes. But I will say that I don't think he's going to amass his true potential with his dad as his head cornerman. I think his father is a bit drunk on his own son's success.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to be a proud father, and he certainly has a lot to be proud of. His son is an incredible world champion boxer, one of the best in the world. But when you get drunk on that success and you start to think that I'm a star too, you know what I mean? That's when the problems start to come in, and that's when things start to unravel. I think if Teofimo last night, because we're talking about he's going to 140, 147. He said it himself, I'm cutting too much weight. So then you start to look at who's in those divisions, Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence Jr., people like that. You behave the way he behaved in the first round against Terrence Crawford, you're going to sleep.
Yeah.
And he needs to get an adult in the room as far as his training camp goes. His dad is a good boxing mind. He knows boxing, but the advice was all over the place last night. The way he handled it as a head cornerman, I think, was unprofessional, and I think he needs to reevaluate. And I'm not saying throw your dad out of the corner, but I'm saying bring somebody else in as well.
Yeah, and there's always room for upgrades. When you start to make more money, when you start to progress in your career, there's room to make upgrades and adjustments to your camp. Don't abandon ship, but you can always spruce it up a little bit. And I think that's really what he needs to do. I do think that he's probably the size of a 140 fighter, so I'd like to see him make that natural move up. But Kambosos also looked like, I don't think he was a majorly undersized fighter when you're watching these two next to each other. I thought that they both looked like they belonged in that division. The fact that Teofimo's ready to move up shows me that he really doesn't have any more business down there. He doesn't want to fight Kambosos again, and I think that he thinks there's bigger fights for him to be had at 140 and maybe plus 147.
Yeah.
But Teofimo's dad is kind of rubbing off on Teofimo because I wasn't a big fan of how he thought he won 10 of those 12 rounds.
And he was in Brooklyn, right? In his hometown. And, not far from where he grew up, 90+% of that crowd was a pro Teofimo crowd.
Right.
At the end of that fight, when he said, I won 10 of the 12 rounds, it was a resounding boo.
Right.
When your backyard is booing you for saying something as ridiculous as that, that's a wake-up call.
Yeah, it's not a good look. And, you don't want to be a sore loser. And we always talk about how in MMA it's okay to lose. Dana White has spent an entire career making a sport where it is okay to lose, just like any other sport, which I find to be really great. You can have a best-of-7 series in the World Series, and look at the Braves just beat the Astros, but they lost some of those games in that series, right? Tom Brady can lose on Sunday and then 3 Sundays later win a Super Bowl.
Right.
Boxing has made it unacceptable to lose, and that's why we have some of these sore losers at the end of matches. When they finally lose, if they're undefeated and they get beat, they can't accept it and they don't like it because they know, not because of their own fault, but because of boxing, now they're on the way down because there's just no way to recover from losing. Yeah. And I don't like that at all. And that's why I think we get so many sore losers at the end of boxing matches. Once they lose that undefeated record, and now they're 15-1, which is an incredible record.
Yeah.
The boxing just washes their hands with them and says, okay, on to the next undefeated guy. And I think that's a big problem. I think that's partially why we saw Teofimo come out the way he did. I'd like to see him congratulate Kambosos, move on to 140, see what he's got in store for us up there. I think there's some great fights for him. I think he's got a lot of growing to do as a fighter, as a person, and obviously he's got to upgrade that corner a little bit.
Yeah, and I think when he got out of that ring last night and into the dressing room and took a look at his face in the mirror and saw how badly he was cut, and then goes back and rewatches this fight again, if he assesses at that point that he still won the fight and much less won 10 of the 12 rounds, then he's become a bit delusional himself. And I think that's where he needs to sort of to change a little bit in his game, because all the raw skills are there, as I said. Right. Teofimo Lopez is a fantastic fighter, and he will likely be a world champion again with a couple of tweaks. Mm-hmm. But to think that you won that fight or to won 10 of the 12 rounds is just simply not what happened, and it would do him a disservice to continue believing that. And that's why you need to have more than just yes men in your corner. Yeah. Now, Kambosos, I think going forward at 135, he said, I'm going to Vegas because Devin Haney's fighting soon. Yeah. I'm going to go to Vegas and call out Devin Haney. I love it. This kid understands the game. He didn't back down to the trash talk of Teofimo. He rose to the occasion, and now he said, I'm going to take this momentum and take all these brand new belts that I have and go put them in Devin Haney's face and see what he has to say about it. Love it. I think this kid's good for the sport, great for Australian boxing, and he said it last night. If Teofimo wants to do it again, we could do it in front of 80,000 people in Australia. Teofimo didn't really seem like he wanted to do it, but I'm sure somebody would take that stadium fight against Kambosos in Australia like that.
Yeah, that would be a big moment for somebody, especially the folks in Australia, if they were able to go see the fight live, and who knows. But we won't get into that. I think Devin Haney is a good move for him, and Devin Haney needs to watch that fight and understand what Teofimo did wrong and then not go do that against Kambosos, because Kambosos is the kind of guy that sees his moment last night. And history usually tells us what's going to happen in the future. If he's able to seize his moment and continue to understand that what he's got right now is special, he's the champ. He could potentially unify if he's able to win some more fights. I think that he's got to come in with a good game plan. He'll come in with the right game plan for Devin Haney. And if Devin Haney goes in and doesn't respect this man, we could see him steal that green belt from Devin Haney. And then we're talking about now a pound-for-pound top 5 guy who was on nobody's radar this time last year.
That's the beautiful thing about it.
Yep.
Guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Drop us a comment and let us know, do you agree? Does Teofimo need to shake some things up in his camp? And what did you think of George Kambosos' fantastic come-from-behind, upset performance last night? We always love chatting with you guys in the comments. And if you haven't already and you like all things combat sports, a subscribe to this channel and a like on this video is much appreciated. Guys, have a wonderful day.
Peace.